So the question is timing on everything. Uh, I was going to give everybody a week to write your report. So it is actually due in a week from Friday.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Um, so because people, this is still the excavation section, you should be at this point wrapping everything up, drawing your profiles. Um, you should backfill eventually, but if you want to leave it open while you're writing, that's up to you. And honestly, each of you are probably going to backfill in different ways, right? Some of you are in a backyard. Some of you, Keegan, you might even want to continue your excavations for fun the rest of the semester, and so you'll expand it, one way or another. That's up to you. Backfilling is very much about the property owner. It's not about the archaeology. So whatever you're comfortable with or the landowner is comfortable with. And after this is done, you are, technically certified to continue your own excavations on that property if you continue to have permission and you have the drive or the desire to. Just remember that if you actually do find something culturally significant, feel free to check with me and check with the SHPO, right? So most of you are already in contact or at least have all the info for your local SHPO. So you know who to call if you find something outside of the purview of this class. Now, I will remain open to, you guys have my cell phone number. It's not like that's going to change. If you run into anything, even outside of this class, and you got a question, feel free to text me, all right? Even if you go on and you're working on some project next year, and you stumble across something and you think, I wonder if Dr. Hickson has a thought on this, feel free to text me, all right? So we are, estamos en contacto. We're in contact. All right. Very good. It looks like we're pretty much all here. I want to talk a little bit about artifacts. So just letting you know, I did upload this link for you of Montpelier's excavation reports. And it's the sister project of the one I've been working on for the last 2 years at Belgrove. Literally the sister project. This was James Madison and Dolly Madison's house, and Dolly Madison's sister was at Belgrove. So this was the sister-in-law's house at Belgrove. So we had sister projects, and a lot of the archaeologists are the same. So I thought it'd be interesting for you to just have a few more archaeological reports to look through as references as you're writing your reports. First, they have it organized by what type of surveying they were doing. So here's the results of the metal detecting survey they did. And then this is site 44 OR 333, which is the farm complex, and 249, the main house and the grounds. And you can link then to the actual technical reports right there. And you'll see that, well, what would you find in a old tobacco barn versus next to the main mansion, right? Or the stables. And you'll find different types of artifacts and features in each area. And I thought that for most of you, since you're doing, most of you are not doing Native American artifacts or sites at the moment, you're doing kind of urban archaeology, these might be good references. And they're just excellent publications if you want, again, that to see a few technical reports. These are not published like for journals. These are written the way that I'm expecting you to write yours. Technical outlined reports of the actual excavations. So just a whole wealth of excavation reports right here. I'm not going to go through all of them. By the way, those are some pretty cool excavations they were doing there. Look at that. That entire yard all done in just a ton of 2x2s. All right. I'm going to pull up, for once, I'm actually going to use a PowerPoint. My Hood students who have taken my archaeology class will have seen some of these before. But since I have some students in here who have not taken a archaeological method and theory class in the past, I feel like I should add this in to make sure that you understand what you would do with all this stuff you dug up, right? So the main thing we do is, of course, anchor your excavations in time and space. So you did kind of the spatial background already. You looked up your topo maps, the history of the property, and you also anchored your excavations within space, right? You mapped it in and placed it on the property. Now it's about time, and then we'll get to function in a little bit. So the first thing we want to do is just anchor what we're doing in time and space first. After excavation, the rule of thumb tends to be for big projects. Now, this would not apply to just a 1x1, but in general, for every week you spend excavating, you spend 3 to 5 times that cleaning, conserving, cataloging, and writing up everything. So that's another reason why your report is not due this week. Your report is due next week, due next Friday. You want to catalog all of your artifacts. And this can be in just simply a Microsoft Word document since you're just doing it for yourself. Most bigger projects set up like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. If you are comfortable with Excel, you can do that. But the whole idea is you're cataloging them by artifact type and by location. And that is in 3D location, right? So in our case, it'd be at what level, in what context did you find those things? So those artifacts will always then be associated with that context. And the first thing you really do is just classify it into its type. What is it? Right? The type can be a lot of different things to different people, and it depends on why you're doing the categorization. Your most basic thing is going to be like, what's the material? All right, so glass, pottery, stone, brick. Your types can also be, what if everything is lithic? Well, then type is something else. You would do different types of lithic stones. So typology is the systematic arrangement of material culture into types. And the archaeologist defines the types. So you're simplifying your data to X amount of this was found here. X amount of that was found here. And that simplifies your data from a whole mess of stuff you got on your table after you washed it, down to essentially an Excel spreadsheet or something simplified where you could put into a few sentences a summary of what you found. The patterns that you're looking for depend upon the purpose of your typology. So in terms of projectile points, not there's of course the first macro category, projectile points, right? So you identify it as a projectile point, but then you have to sort them out into different kinds of projectile points. Most of you will not have to do this, and Amanda, luckily, other people have already done this, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you can place your finds within the larger typology that's already been created by other archaeologists. And it will allow you, especially for the case of like projectile point, it allows you to anchor it in time. Somebody else has found this point always associated with these other artifacts, and it indicates that they are from a particular time period. By the way, I was trying to remember the word when I was describing the points. The paleo points tend to have like a flute. So they'd have like a notch at the base and then a flute, which is one flake scar going up where it was hafted. So you don't have those. You're going a little bit later. So a type is a group of artifacts defined by a consistent clustering of attributes, whatever that attribute is. Remember that types are abstractions. Archaeologists are creating these types. Native people, the people you're studying, didn't necessarily organize their world the way that you are going to organize it, right? So, for instance, in your world, do you really look around your room and think, oh, that's window glass, and this is a drinking glass? I mean, you know it, but you don't, that doesn't rule your world, right? You don't organize your life based upon that. Flat glass is window glass, curved glass, drinking glass. Well, but we need to do that as an archaeologist, because when you get your stuff in, you got too much stuff. You've got to categorize it and figure out how to put it into some usable types. So, for instance, if you have a lot of glass, let's start off by separating it into flat glass and curved glass. That will give you vessel glass, is what we call it, vessel glass versus window glass. What are those two contexts in real life? In real life, that means structural and dining, right? Kitchen, living area versus building. So right there, you've done yourself a service by separating out your vessel glass from your window glass, and you'll see whether or not you're digging in a context that is largely structural, or is it where people tossed things out after they broke, right? So you technically, in advanced archaeology, you create your typologies. For most of you, you don't need to do that. Again, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Typologies exist. Mostly, we're going to be talking about morphology, right? The shape of something. A morphological type just is what I just described. Curved glass versus flat glass. That is a shape. And so you focus upon the morphology of it, and then let the data tell you whatever patterns you see in those shapes. It's purely descriptive. So if I said curved glass versus flat glass, that is morphological type. If I then went the next level and made a conclusion that I had vessel glass versus window glass, that actually is a functional type. You're adding some layer of understanding of how that object was used in the past. So at the basic level, you don't have to necessarily know what everything is or what it was used for. If you just do a morphological, okay, here's my metal, right? Metal is metal. That quality exists in the object. You're not applying anything, any understanding to it. So you got your metal. All right, now sort it into your different types of metal. We got iron, we got steel, we got maybe you have some aluminum, I don't know, copper, sorted into that different type. That is your basic morphological, there's something inherent in the object that allows you to just sort it like that. If that's all you can do because you don't know what those things are, that's fine. Actually, especially with like rusted pieces of metal, we often don't know what the hell they are. Little bits of rusted iron are just, usually we just describe them, are they flat? And if so, we just call them flat iron. So that's again a morphological, where you're just talking about the shape and the quality, that something inherent in the object without adding any type of interpretation to it. There are temporal types. I'm not going to go into this because you guys, none of you are doing ceramic seriation on your projects. If you go onto a big project somewhere, and like the ancient Maya, ancient Rome, you would have so many ceramics that you would actually have to categorize them by shape. And one of the ways that ceramics, especially ancient ceramics, are seriation, it means sorted into categories that refer to time. One of the ways that they do this is, so what you're seeing here on the screen are profile drawings of rim shapes. So a professional ceramicist in the lab would spend a lot of time drawing the profiles of their sherds. But again, probably not important for most of you guys this summer. What Amanda is going to be doing is actually kind of just using other people's references and just trying to place her point into some temporal category. Right? She's not necessarily going to tell me or the shippo what was this spear used for. That would take a lot of different, you probably have to do some trace chemical analysis. There's blood residue analysis you can do. It's all cool stuff, but all we know is it's a projectile point. So what do we use that for? Generally, we use that for a temporal type. So we were looking them up, and it seemed to be your smaller one might have been a early to middle archaic, the larger one a little bit later, maybe. I'll trust you to do the research on that. But we use them kind of like what we call it as an index fossil, which we borrow again from geology. When you find a certain animal in the ground, that gives you the time period that you were probably working with. Same deal with projectile points. There are also functional types. So this is where I was trying to say, it's taking that one step further of not just saying curved glass and flat glass, but you're saying serving vessels versus structural. So that's applying a function, some understanding of how the object was used. And this often forms assemblages. So everything, even though all those pieces of pottery in the upper right corner are different, they might all be associated with serving vessels. You might be digging in a context where you're only getting nails, brick, window glass, bits of iron. Well, that's not domestic, right? That's not from inside the house. That's structural, right? So that would be assigning some type of function to your artifacts. So you can kind of look at your artifacts and say, all right, how much of this stuff would be inside the house versus how much of this is actually outdoor stuff, structural, yard debris, versus do I have things that actually have been discarded from a more domestic context. What you basically want to do is minimize the differences within each created type and maximize the differences between each type. In other words, group like things with like things and use criteria that differentiate those things from the unlike things, right? So find some criteria that allows you to group your artifacts so that you can summarize, and this group is distinct from this group because of some criteria. Depending on the purpose of what you're doing, you can use various typologies. That's up to you, but you just need to explain to the reader why you organized things that way. So I have usually, in this level of work, we're just talking about your major material types, you know, again, glass, nails, brick, ceramic, blah, blah, blah. Those are nice, discrete categories. And you can differentiate most of those from the other. So just remember, the attributes that you are going to be recording about these things are up to you. Maybe you found buttons. Well, what do you want to tell me about the buttons? I heard from Aaron that they're plastic. So that's an attribute. So you found buttons. That's a functional thing, right? We know what those are. Then what are you going to tell me about it? Well, they were plastic. Okay, that's an interesting attribute. Do you need to tell me what color they were? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe that's not important. So that attribute may or may not be included. Maybe you have a whole boatload of buttons and it seems like they are different sizes. And maybe you would want to go through with a caliper, measure all of your buttons, and you could separate them into different sizes. Or maybe size didn't matter. So attributes are up to the archaeologist as to what you are going to, what you're going to describe that artifact as kind of possessing. What attributes does it possess? And of course, every artifact possesses almost an infinitesimal, is that the right word? Anyway, is it an infinite number of attributes? And so you just need to be explicit and just say, this is how I sorted my stuff, and here's my results. Right? I think that's about as far as I was going to go. Yeah, so, you know, if this is what a professional would do, that might even help you, Amanda. That PowerPoint, I mean, Projectile Point website has you do some of these things too. Measure different angles, length, width, also turning it sideways, looking at it, looking at the stem straight on. What shape is it? Is it ovoid like that? Is it, you know, so you can look at all those different attributes. And again, look at these measurements on this screen. Do you think the Native American making their points were going, you know, I need the angle of the neck to be a little bit different because that's the style these days? No, this is just something that We put these attributes on this. We decided as archaeologists what's important to measure. It's not necessarily that the people who made them thought of these objects the way we do. All right, so yeah, this is just this is again from my other class. So here's one of those decision trees. Is it a notched point? If it's not, then is the W is the weight smaller than 1.5 grams? Is the length greater than 30 millimeters, etc.? Yes, then you've got a cottonwood triangular, etc., etc. Now, again, we don't know if Native Americans actually grouped their own points the way we do. They were using them. They weren't trying to use them to create a chronology. That's what we do. They probably would have said, this is the one I use for fish, right? This is the one I use when I need to hunt a deer. We don't have access to that knowledge, so we use other measurements. All right, yeah, and then those get built upon each other, and then eventually that becomes material culture, and that's what defines different culture regions, et cetera, and builds and builds. But that's what I wanted to share with you, a little bit of that lecture. I hope that helps. Do we have questions?
I have one question. I'm assuming that when we put these artifacts in our report, we'll be saying like what level we found that in.
Right. So remember, that's another element of space. First thing you do is you anchor it in space. It was found in this unit at this level.
Right. And so when I'm describing that level in my report, the four corners of it are pretty close, but not exactly. Would I just say, like, for example, 40 to 55? Do I just kind of like round it out, or
sure,
take the lowest, the highest, or like?
Yeah.
What's the
Did you take center?
Yeah.
You could always just go center for each
Just
one.
the center. Okay.
But you're right. That's kind of one of those decisions we just have to make. It's not completely standardized. So if you're looking at your data and, mostly level 2 went from, 15 to 25 centimeters, but you're looking at the actual data and it's kind of a little different in each corner. Yeah, that's very normal. And I tend to just look at, well, what did the center do?
Okay.
It's a good kind of indication. That's why we take the center point at the very beginning and just keep taking that down. That's also the point that we often forget to take. So if any of you forgot to take your center points, then you can maybe do some averaging, right?
So it just sounds like just use whatever is kind of the most descriptive and.
Yeah, that's not a hard and fast rule in archaeology. It's
okay.
Because everybody who digs a hole knows that your corners are not going to be all exactly the same. So we all kind of summarize. Because what do you really want to do? You want to tell somebody that these artifacts were found a certain amount under the surface, and you want to tell them that they were found below or above other artifacts, right? Those are the important things. So again, that's what I'm trying to get you to think about is, I know I gave you a nice outline where you can just kind of cut and paste a lot of stuff in, but the best thing I can give you is the ability to make some of these decisions yourself, and understand that everybody who digs a hole understands that the main point is going to be, where was this artifact found in XY space, right? So that would be your test unit. grid, and then in vertical space. And most importantly, is it above or below other things? So, Aaron, I know this was kind of part of what you were asking yesterday. Is this addressing any issues you had? Do I have Aaron? Yeah, I got Aaron.
Yeah.
It's okay. You caught you on the smoke break or something?
No, I was I just had to unmute my laptop. Yeah, it's addressing some of them. It's going to be tough because I mean, like 90. I probably have like 200 pieces of glass to go through.
Right.
But they're all. I mean, I don't know. They're all either going to be clear, brown, green, blue,
Color.
flat, or curved.
Yeah.
So
there you go. There's another attribute that would be a good. So first you start off with, this is glass. And then you go, you know, what color? And that will say, I've got 20 pieces of this, 40 pieces of that. And it sounds like a lot, but it goes a lot quicker than you think.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And most of them, the dirt just rubs right off too.
Well, yeah, with glass, just drop that into some water.
Yeah, it's just hard to. Yeah, it's just not. I know it's just not going to say much, given most of it comes from fill. So we just have no idea where it came from.
Well, I would be curious as to whether or not you have, you know, sounds like you have more vessel glass than you have structural glass. If it's coming in those colors.
Yeah. Yeah, I
so
have
bottle
all
glass.
kinds.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, so we'll see if there's any patterns that come out. That's when you're going to find out, is when you sort. So
Yep.
Good. All right. Anybody else have any questions, thoughts, concerns? All right. Well, that was my lecture on sorting your artifacts. If nobody has more questions, I want to give you as much time as you can, as I can, for you to do your work. So if there aren't, then I will let you guys go.